Well, I always think that a Sunday in which starts with playing with Lego, that's always a good Sunday at church, no matter what happens. So I think this is good. That image of an interlocking collection of pieces which come together and build a house or build a church, I think is an important and a powerful image for us. And Peter talks about that in our reading. He's writing to a community of faith, and he says that they're not to be stones which are disconnected and exist apart, existing by themselves. Rather, they're called to be put together and built into a spiritual house. But it's more than just being in the same place, isn't it? After all, a box of Lego doesn't make a house, and a pile of rocks doesn't constitute a temple. To be the church is to be a people that comes together out of an inner longing to engage in the presence of our Lord, to live out the story in which we are immersed, the activity of God in our world. And what's more, to be living stones in this world, we must live out that reality and proclaim that reality to the world around us. That's what Peter gets to. And so I want to invite you to pick up your pew Bibles and turn to 1 Peter chapter 2. The best way to find 1 Peter is to work from the back. The last book is Revelation, then you get Jude, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and then 1st and 2nd Peter. So that's the easiest way to find it, is to work backwards. And that part of the letter that we read today is a fabulous encouragement and a reminder of that which is our identity. To be living stones, we need to have a longing to grow deeper in God's presence. Our reading opens with the words, "Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up to your salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good." Christian faith, our faith, doesn't end at the point of new birth. Sometimes we use that language. We use the language of being born again, or we use the language of coming to faith or accepting Jesus. But sometimes we use that language as describing a destination, that we've arrived at this place of faith. You know, we've gone through the open door, so why go further down the hallway? We're there. You know, once we've arrived at faith, or once we've been baptized, or once we've had our kids baptized or confirmed, it means that we can stop. And we don't have to worry about our growth anymore. There's a story of a church. It's a very well-known story. You probably have heard it. If you've heard it, laugh anyway. There's a story of a church that had bats in the rafters. And they've tried everything to get these bats out of the ceiling of the church, the rafters of the church. And they've tried everything, finally, until one wise person in the church comes to the pastor and says, "I have a solution. Baptize them, and you'll never see them again." Sometimes we think that baptism is the end of the road, right? I've been baptized. I don't need to progress any further. Baptism is actually a beginning. It begins our life with God, our life with Jesus as we go forward. Confirmation sometimes is another thing that in the Anglican Church we hold up as kind of an ending point, a marker. You know, well, I've been confirmed, that's it. Well, no. At this last conference I was at, the speaker talked about how his bishop described confirmation kind of like ordination, a lay person's ordination. You are confirmed, you have the Spirit bestowed upon you so that you can minister in the church, so that you can work in the church and in the world. Peter calls the community of Christians that he's writing to long to grow deeper in their faith. Like infants that need milk in order to grow, we need to look for those things that God will give us so that we can grow. We're to long for, to crave for, to yearn for God's presence in our lives. We are to anticipate times of closeness with him, to seek it out, to stand together as a church, waiting to experience what God will do in our midst. Let me ask you, did you come to church this morning anticipating that you will grow in your faith? Did you come anticipating that not only is God here in the midst of our worship service, but God will be present with you and will make you grow further in your salvation and allow you to taste again that the Lord is good? Did you have that anticipation, that yearning as you came through the doors of the church this morning? If not, then why not? What is it about church or our understanding of faith that says, well, that could never happen? Why would I think about that? The community of faith that Peter's writing to, and I think the community of faith here that listens to this writing, is to be challenged in the knowledge that God not only is here this morning in our midst, but God is active. To be living stones is to a people who long for more and more and more of God's presence. And to that end, we come here open and waiting to receive. As you come to him, Peter says, you yourselves, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house. Now, to understand that image, we really need to know kind of what Peter is referring to. And it goes all the way back to Old Testament. When Israel crossed the Jordan into the Promised Land, the first thing that Joshua has the people do is to pick up 12 large stones along the river and to set them up on the riverbank on the side of the Promised Land. So they've crossed the river, and now Joshua says, okay, play with some Lego. Right? Make some stone, kind of like an Inukshuk, but a little bit, probably a bit more complicated and elaborate. And the point was there was 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel, and so they replaced them up. The point of doing this, Joshua says, is so that when your children ask, hey, what do these stones mean? You can say, let me tell you what God has done for us in this place. Let me tell you the story of who God is and who we are. Those standing stones, sometimes they're referred to as standing stones or living stones, those stones is a constant reminder of the testimony, of the story that was the heart of who Israel was. So Peter takes that image and says, you yourself, you are a living stone, and you're being built into a spiritual house. We are to be people who say to anybody who asks, to anybody who questions, to anybody who inquires, let me tell you about what God is doing in this place. Or let me tell you about what God has done here. Let me tell you about what the Lord has done in my life. We are walking testimonies. We bear the story of who God is in this world and of what Jesus has done. But notice that Peter is not writing to individuals. He's writing to a community. He's writing to a holy people, a chosen nation, a royal priesthood. The community, the church, exists as the individual stones come together and tells not just one story, but one story after another story after another story. It's the tapestry of witnesses that come together. And it becomes a profound witness. We often talk about how the church is not the building, the church is the people. But it's more than just Holy Cross Harry and Holy Cross Harriet coming together in the same place at the same time, sitting on the opposite sides of the pews and singing the same songs. What makes it a church, what makes us a church, is being